Hello everybody, it's me, Blackstar Chan X3 aka Marshall. So you know that The Legend of Zelda has games. Lots and lots of games. But weirdly enough, I didn't really get into the games until I was convinced to pick up Breath of the Wild. And why? Why did I pick up Breath of the Wild? Because I heard there was a cooking mechanic. Yes, really. My almost avoidance of the games came from me being kind of at the 3DS versions, like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I kinda avoided the series since I needed a lot of walkthroughs. I still do for some of the shrines. This was all despite one of my favorite YouTubers, Peanut Butter Gamer, telling everyone how great they are, my dad playing Link to the Past on the SNES for us all to watch before I even knew what a Let's Play was, and generally just being a Nintendo fan since I was born. All those factors meant nothing. Cooking. That was the real draw. Off topic, I loved Cooking Mama as a kid. But you know what I mainly knew Zelda for growing up? The manga. Did you know The Legend of Zelda had manga? I feel like most people don't, or at least they don't mention they do. I happened to stumble across these manga as a young child back when my family would visit the public library, and between Yotsuba and some obscure magical girl manga, Link's insane adventures across Hyrule, the sea, and Termina were my favorites. I'm not sure which ones I read first. I remember the ones I read for sure were Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time Volume 1, Majora's Mask, and Phantom Hourglass. Weirdly enough, I have only read Four Swords recently. I don't have any recollection of reading that one as a kid, and I didn't even know Oracle of Ages existed. Then I realized Twilight Princess, which I assumed had like 5 volumes or something max when I happened to see its black-bound covers in the bookstores, had 11 volumes, and it just ended recently. I realized I had a lot of catching up to do since I was a kid. So I did what any sane person would do, and used all my birthday monies to get every single Zelda manga under the sun, and my older brother got me Japanese copies of the Four Swords, because I'm mentally ill for every character in that book and I wanted to read the sacred texts in the origin language. Sadly, I'm not fluent enough in Japanese to read it yet, but I need more Four Swords content, I'm begging you! I'll pick up the Legendary Edition. It's cheaper than buying 2 full-price manga. It has colored pages. Plop your ass down, read it, and get hyperfixated like I did. Then, draw a bunch of fan art. Oh, and there's randomly a Link to the Past manga that came from frickin' Nintendo Power of all places. I mostly skimmed it because its coloring style isn't my thing. It's very 80s. But if there's enough demand, I might read it and discuss it for a video too. Weirdly, it's listed on Amazon as a part of the original run of the Zelda manga, even though it's not by Akira Himikawa. Rather, The Legend of Zelda Nintendo Power serialization was done by Shotaro Ishinomori. I'd like to make a series going over each and every Zelda manga, specifically the ones done by Himikawa-sensei. Yes, I'd like to get into Twilight Princess as well, but I imagine that's going to be a trip. I have a love-hate relationship with that series. Mostly love. Mostly. I'd also love to go into the other manga I enjoy, outside of Legend of Zelda. I have an entire shelf that is screaming at me to speak of what lies between those yellow pages. But for now, let's jump into Zelda. So before I get into the story of the first 2 books of the series, Ocarina of Time, Volume 1 and 2, since I will be going in order of the release dates, I'm going to give some background information of this series of manga. So if you wanted me to go over the manga in this video, this is a precursor to the rest of the series. Sorry. The manga started in 1999 by 2 women, S. Nagano and A. Honda. Together they are under the pen name Akira Himikawa. Yes, they are 2 people, but I will go back and forth between naming them individually or speaking of them as Akira Himikawa, so keep that in mind. They saw an ad for Ocarina of Time and soon after got a call asking if they wanted to work on a serialization for a manga for it, and thank goodness they did, because these books are my childhood. They seem to be a great team, and they produce very efficiently from the release dates, which we'll get into now. There's 10 volumes in total in the original series of Zelda manga. Mostly one-off volumes or 2-volume adventures, but apparently they were based on, quote, themes. Ocarina of Time, Volume 1 and 2 were released in 2000 with the theme Cool. Fun fact about me, I have the first edition of the English manga and a 3rd edition of the Legendary, which was in, quote, good condition when I bought it. Sure, its spine's more broken than my younger brother's and he has scoliosis, but sure, good condition. Frickin' book was abused. But I'm hesitant to buy a perfect condition copy now because owning it 3 times would just be silly, am I right? Buying used books on Amazon's a gamble. Majora's Mask was also good, but it's virtually untouched outside of scuffs. And the classic, I reread this page over and over, so the book likes to autoflip to these pages thing. Is there a term for that? If not, there should be. I also bought a used Japanese textbook for literally a quarter of the list price, and it's virtually brand new. Used books are good to buy since you're giving them a new home and preventing waste, but buying new books gives money back to the people who worked hard to bring them to you in the first place. So it's really whichever is more appealing to you. For some reason, my brain also mixed up Ocarina of Time Part 2 and Link to the Past. My guess is that Ocarina of Time Volume 2 was mostly random side stories that I didn't remember that well, and the Ganon fights. But the fight with Dark Link, not Shadow Link, they're separate characters, please label them correctly, and the fight with Volvagia was way more interesting, and had more parallels to something that happens in Link to the Past. They both involve dragons, friendship, and betrayal, so I don't know. Parallels are drawn by my brain. Anyways, Majora's Mask released in 2001 and is a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, with the theme Strange. I own a copy of this manga as a single volume. I don't remember how I got it, just that it's very yellow and very old. My copies of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are probably older than some of you watching this, and I find that kind of horrifying in a cosmic sort of way. I thought one of my Zelda mangas were secondhand from a library, because if you don't know, libraries sell their old stock. But none are. Weird. I must have mixed that up with my Pokemon manga. Because like I said, I read these copies from the library a lot, I just hardwire remember them having library stuff on their spines, which, yes, there's a lot of Pokemon manga. Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages were released in 2001 and 2002 respectively, with the theme being cute. I also read it was about love, so I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't finished these yet, nobody talks about them, so I think they're a bit forgettable. Not a fan of the animal sidekicks, to be honest. I do like Link's character from what I read though. He's a sweet little man. Four Swords 1 and 2 were released in 2004 and 2005 with the theme of personality. They're my personal favorites out of the original 10, because it's gay. And I'll get into that when we do a deep dive. I have so many thoughts, but I'll spare you for now. I'm just gonna leave you with an image from the Legendary Edition, and that made my brain explode when I saw it. Link to the Past was released in 2005 with the theme of pure love. I feel like this one's a little more looser than the others. I feel like adventure would be more fitting, or friendship and togetherness, considering the crux of defeating Ganon hinges on those traits, but that's just me. I love this one too because of Ganty. My women-loving heart loves Ganty and Zelda in this manga. I just adore them both. Characterization-wise and, obviously appearance-wise, they're both beautiful and sweet in their own ways. Very different flavors of women from each other, but they're both great female characters, and I'd love to do a deep dive on both of them when we get into the Link to the Past manga. Out of all the side characters in Zelda manga, Ganty's probably one of my favorites. She's a manga exclusive, at least. Minish Cap was released in 2006 with the theme of fairy tales. I don't remember reading this one as a kid, but I might have just mixed it up with Phantom Hourglass. The art styles are so similar. I have skimmed it multiple times, but I haven't sat down to reread it or read it for the first time. Biggest complaint is that Vadi's barely in it. I mostly bought it to see Vadi after reading Four Swords. Also, spoilers, he's redeemed, which except canonically how he turns more evil and appears in Four Swords. Game deviation is a common thing in the manga, which I don't typically mind, but this is a huge thing to deviate, and messes up the Zelda timeline. From Twilight Princess and Four Swords, we know the books are canon to each other. To avoid Twilight Princess spoilers, because trust me, it's a massive spoiler if you don't know shit about the game or the manga, I'll put it simply and say someone from Ocarina of Time is in Twilight Princess. And the reason we know Four Swords is connected to Ocarina of Time, at least, is because Vio mentions Ganondorf being the Gerudo King, which is a thing in Ocarina of Time. Anyways, I've made it very clear on this channel that I love Vadi, so I'm just being butthurt about this short man. I want to kick him and pat him on the head simultaneously. I'm only human after all. Phantom Hourglass released in 2009, and its theme being jokes, which is very evident if you've even glanced inside. The art style is goofy and cute, and I remember rereading this one fondly as a kid, doodling stuff based on it. Its art style is very appealing to me as a kid, and I'm glad I can mimic that art style now that I'm older. Twilight Princess, while not being a part of the original set of manga, also has the theme of challenge, which is a very fitting description of those 11 books of complete madness because we'll get into it someday. So I was reading the interviews in the Legendary Editions for this script, seeing if there was more interesting stuff in there, and here's a little fun fact. The Rito were influenced by a race of bird people shown in the Ocarina of Time bonus manga, a character named Roru who's from the Watarara tribe. So we can thank Akira Himikawa for eventually came of the Rito's existence.
It's just asinine.
I can only imagine the ramifications of the Rito not existing in Zelda, so like, holy shit. Akira Himikawa left a huge mark on the Zelda games if you really think about it. And from the interviews, it seems like they also do art for the game sometimes. That's awesome. Another thing I saw that made my heart leap out of my chest is, this is paraphrased, is that they wanted to work on a Breath of the Wild manga but had to finish Twilight Princess. Keep in mind these interviews are old, like varyingly old, but I will remind you, Twilight Princess is over. We might get a Breath of the Wild manga, and if we do, I'm going to scream. I need at least 30 volumes. Personally, if they were to do any different Zelda manga next, I'm conflicted on whether or not I want a Wind Waker manga, a Link's Awakening manga, or Breath of the Wild. My brain would literally explode at any of these. Single volumes or longer adventures, I'd take any. Back to the manga that exist. Something I find interesting is most of them dodge a lot of the criticisms I hear about stuff like the Zelda cartoon. Quote, it doesn't feel like Zelda. Funny enough, I feel like the manga gets this really well. The vibe of what Zelda is, at least, is captured. The manga skips long dungeon crawling, but captures the spirit of Hyrule. Iconic imagery and locations are shown off, as well as enemies, and I feel like these adaptations have a lot of love in them. The most common criticism I hear of the cartoon is about Link himself, like how he acts like a sexual deviant tool, and him talking ruins his character. I feel like Peanut Butter Gamer sums it up really well in his Zelda cartoon video about how Link is generally characterized.
But I think what makes Link an admirable hero is that he never seeks action and glory. He was simply ready and willing to fight for others because he was placed in a bad situation and or he just knew it was the right thing to do.
And yeah, he's 100% correct. Don't know if his opinions have changed since 2014, but I feel like it still stands. Link's just a good boy who does good things, and I like that about him. I think most people outside of shitposters who make him evil for evil's sake do genuinely see Link the way previously described. In the interviews of the books, it's stated he's not like typical manga protagonists. At least male ones, and yeah, I agree. I like that Link's a good boy. He can be flawed, but overall he's just a good guy. Link's characterizations in the manga are really refreshing from the cynical or anti-hero protagonists, which I love by the way, but I just like how Link's just unapologetically good. He reminds me of Steven in that way, and I know a lot of people don't like those types of characters, but I definitely do. Characters who have good in their hearts make me want to do better too, and I don't care if that's unrealistic, to be honest. The series has freaking magic bird people and rock monsters that eat rocks, and magic talking swords. Someone being a human equivalent of a golden retriever isn't a shock to me, which is funny because Himikawa sensei said they were used to writing anti-heroes, and Link was somewhat of a struggle. That's something else. Link talking. I've never really been a person who sees Link as a mute character. I'm sorry, I grew up on the books with him talking a lot. But I can definitely respect and understand the mute Link headcanon, especially Breath of the Wild Link. Bro is stark silent in cutscenes while everyone else talks his ear off. It's hard not to see him as selectively mute in that game. But we know from dialogue options he does talk, and in Japanese the Sheikah Slate missions are from first person, so he does have his own canon personality outside of just being a proxy for the player with his silence. Especially when he cooks for some reason, he'll hum to himself, it's really cute. So if you expected for some reason Link to be mute in the books, he's not. I'd even describe him as a loudmouth at times, especially Blue, but we'll get to Four Swords when we get to it. So that leads us to Ocarina of Time Link. What's he like? He was the first Link to be written by Himikawa sensei, so how is he? Well, we'll pick that up in the next video. Thanks to my patron, FuntimeFreddy60, for supporting me. Subscribe to my Patreon to help with my content, I suppose. I also have a Ko-fi. Hopefully I'll see you soon with the Ocarina of Time video. I still need to script it out. I've started it, but we'll see where it goes. See ya.